The Second World War reached every corner of the globe. But for three Japanese-American families in California, the greatest battle was not fought on distant beaches or in the skies above Europe. It began the day they were ordered to leave their homes, uncertain if they would ever return. Waiting behind was a quiet agricultural inspector named Bob Fletcher, who made a decision that would change all of their lives. The attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, transformed America overnight. Fear spread with astonishing speed. Unfortunately, fear rarely pauses to distinguish between enemies and neighbors. Within months, more than 100,000 Japanese Americans living along the West Coast were ordered into internment camps. Families were given only days to leave everything behind: homes, businesses, livestock, and farms that had taken decades to build. Among those forced to leave were the Tsukamoto, Nitti, and Okamoto families. Their vineyards near Florin, California, represented generations of sacrifice. Unlike a shop in town, a farm cannot simply be locked and reopened years later. The vines must be pruned, the irrigation maintained, the weeds removed, the fruit harvested. Miss even one growing season, and everything can be lost. The families believed they were saying goodbye forever. Then came an extraordinary request. Would Bob Fletcher look after the farms? Fletcher was a state agricultural inspector. He wasn't Japanese. He wasn't wealthy. He wasn't even a close family friend. He was simply a man who believed his neighbors deserved fairness. The families even offered him every penny of the profits. Most people would have accepted. Bob Fletcher did something else. He quit his government job and took responsibility for nearly 90 acres of vineyards, strawberries, and olive trees. The work became relentless. 18-hour days, 7 days a week. He repaired fences, maintained irrigation, paid taxes, settled mortgages, harvested grapes, balanced accounts. Everything had to continue exactly as though the owners had never left. But hard work wasn't his greatest challenge. Hatred was. Many neighbors called him a traitor. Some refused to speak to him. Someone even fired a bullet into one of the barns. It was meant as a warning. Bob Fletcher ignored it. Perhaps the most remarkable part of the story wasn't the work. It was the honesty. The families had offered Fletcher all of the profits. He refused, taking only what he needed to keep the farms running. He carefully set aside the remaining earnings for their rightful owners. Even he and his wife chose not to live inside the family's homes. Instead, they stayed in the workers' bunkhouse. The homes, they believed, still belonged to those who had been forced away. In 1945, the camps finally emptied. Families slowly returned to California. Many expected ruin. Others found strangers living in their homes. Businesses had vanished. Savings had disappeared. The Tsukamotos, the Nittis, and the Okamotos prepared themselves for the same heartbreak. Instead, their vineyards were thriving. Their debts had been paid. Money waited for them in the bank. Everything they feared losing had been protected. Bob Fletcher never believed he had done anything extraordinary. When people praised his courage decades later, he simply smiled. "I don't know about courage," he said. "It took a devil of a lot of work." History remembers generals. It remembers presidents. It remembers battles. But sometimes, the greatest victories belong to people who never carried a weapon. A man who chose compassion over prejudice, duty over comfort, character over applause. Bob Fletcher never fought on the front lines. Yet by saving three families' farms, he preserved something just as valuable: their future. And perhaps that is why his story deserves a place in the annals of history.